Namaste, hello, and welcome to today's teaching. We are going to dive into meditation. So we'll begin with the foundation, the introduction. We'll build upon there, add more resources and more knowledge to your toolbox. But let's begin with the history of meditation. So I'll pull up a little PDF download and we'll run through that together. And then we'll jump into kind of meditation 101. And I really want you to understand one solid practice that you can go to after today's lesson. So that, of course, there's so many, different teachings on meditation, practices of meditation, and I want you to leave with just focusing on maybe one. So let's jump right into the PDF. So diving right into the history of meditation. This is one of the handouts on the history of meditation that I've been teaching for years now in my yoga teacher trainings. So it looks a little crooked here on the screen, but it's not. The first one is talking about there is no information on when exactly meditation began. Nobody really knows, but it's all about speculation. Things have become lost over time. Things have become lost in translation. Certain writings have been destroyed. So the history of it, the exact pinpoint, is very unclear. But there's some speculation that it could have been discovered by ancient people who gathered after a long day of hunting, and they sat down and they stared into a fire while entering a trance-like state. And it's been around for about 5,000 years from the proof of what we have. And based on those teachings of the factual proof that we have from that long ago, kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Hints to us that there have been teachings before that, because hatha yogis, the type of yogis hatha yogis were, they traveled from village to village and they brought their teachings with their words. They didn't bring it in writing. So the writing of hatha yoga didn't come until later. So we also don't know, same thing about hatha yoga, when exactly hatha yoga began either. But they can be looked at as, brother and sister practices. They go together. They're very similar to each other. The earliest documented records of a meditation practice stem from the teachings of the Vedas in ancient India, 1500 BCE. We don't study deep into the Vedas in this training. However, your next training, you might. It's a lot of information, and so we want to start with more of the foundational teachings. The Vedas are great, and you can start with the Vedas. But for a yoga teacher training, we start with, for Hatha Yoga, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, for Raja Yoga, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. The word meditation comes from the Latin root meditatum, which means to ponder. So this is very important, that what I just said right there, that's very important when we study, when we look at yoga from the 8 limbs of yoga perspective, from the Raja Yogi viewpoint, because we're studying the last 3 limbs of yoga. Right, so you go from this place of concentration, maybe pondering, to a deep kind of contentment and trance-like state, and then into a blissful, peaceful state. And so there's more of a breakdown of meditation when we study the 8 limbs of yoga. The initial development by Hindus was to understand and get closer to the true nature of God, of Brahman. The development by Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, began when he reached enlightenment by meditation under a Bodhi tree around 500 BC. There's all kinds of teachings on the Buddha and meditations sitting under the Bodhi tree that you can practice yourself. But this training isn't. I'm not teaching you Buddhism. I'm not a Buddhist teacher, right? I'm a yoga teacher. This is yoga teacher training. So we don't study Hinduism when we don't study Buddhism, but we can look at the concepts and see how they do apply to yoga and the yogic belief system. Between 400 to 100 BCE, the Yoga Sutras were produced. It says, I highly recommend learning about the 8 limbs, which I'm teaching you in this training about the 8 limbs of yoga. So that's exciting for you. Between 400 BCE and 200 CE, the Bhagavad Gita was written. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is a Hindu poem. What does it translate to? The Song of the Lord, right? It's this beautiful poem and scripture that not only goes into the philosophy of yoga, but meditation as well. So the story guides you into a thought pattern of how to live a spiritual life. I read it. I recommend my students reading it. I recommend anybody in a yoga teacher training reading it. I recommend anybody struggling in life to read it. You don't have to take on the practice of Hinduism, and you don't have to go against and defile your own religious practice. If you do so, that is not Hinduism. You can still read the book and not be Hindu, is what I'm saying. So I highly suggest reading it. And in my book study chapter of my yoga teacher training, the book study, I will present some teachings from the Bhagavad Gita, but I'm not pressing Hinduism. So fast forwarding to the 1960s, okay, that's a big jump, but fast forwarding to the 1960s, a little bit more relatable. Maybe not for me, I was born in the 90s, early 90s, but again, that's more relatable than 200 CE. So 1960s was when Hatha Yoga and Transcendental Meditation began. That really gained a lot of popularity in America and Europe. In the 70s is really when it came into America, it started sweeping America by storm. 80s, 90s, and now you can see today it's a booming industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. From the 60s to the present moment, meditation has evolved in many ways. Since we live in such a fast-paced, this says tamasic, but if you understand what that word is at this point, then you'll understand what I'm saying. If not, you will soon. There are three energies: Raja, Tamas, Sattva. We are, as yogis, our goal is to reach a sattvic point. It's like purity and bliss, right? And we can find that quality in relationships, food, experiences. We can also find the qualities of tamasic, tamas, and rajasic, rajas. Rajas would be fast-paced. Rajas would be overly determined, overly angry, and maybe even anxious, really like the high ego. And then tamasic, so we do live in a fast-paced society and we do live in a tamasic society, but tamasic means maybe more heavy, lethargic. If we think of when we mix, earth and water and we create mud, and that mud kind of gets heavy and bogged down and you feel depressed or dulled down, that would be tamasic. So although our work environment is very fast-paced, our food and home environment seems to be very tamasic and lacking in vibrancy, lacking in detailed creativity, individuality, because of the fast-paced society draining you and leading to like the couch potato, just eating a bag of chips, watching TV on the couch to call it relaxation and healing. That is what I'm talking about here. So mindfulness has been practiced more than ever before. People's minds have forgotten but there's a knowing inside of them that draws them to ask questions, that draws them to seek healing, to seek knowledge, to seek something new and evolve. And then, of course, mindfulness, which is not the same thing as meditation. Mindfulness has been around for about 50 years, only 50 years, as we've studied it. I mean, again, like, we are the ones that are getting deeper into the details of it, right? So people after hunting, they didn't sit and study a book about meditation. They went and they did their hunting, and then they sat by the fire and went in and stared at the fire and went into this trance state. And so they weren't dissecting it and questioning it, right? They were just experiencing it. Now we dissect and question everything, which leads us to understanding that there are branches of meditation. There's branches and levels to teaching things, and mindfulness can be a separate thought than meditation. It was created in the West, but was inspired mainly by the Eastern world, particularly from Buddhist traditions. Mindfulness practices started becoming more popular around 50 years ago, but it's been around for 2,500 years. Mindfulness was created to reduce stress and end suffering. So let me back out of here and pull up my next slide for Meditation 101. So let's talk about the benefits and the neuroscience of meditation, because why would we practice something if we don't understand it? If you get into a meditation practice and you realize, just like these hunters did, that this was something that was beneficial for you and that you enjoyed, and then you went back and you learned the benefits and the neuroscience. That's great, but a lot of times in today's world, we struggle with consistency. And what drives our consistency sometimes is the knowledge from questioning. And therefore, when we have the knowledge of the benefits and the neuroscience, we may be more inclined to continue our practice. Of course, we know it reduces anxiety, stress, and depression. It increases creativity, intelligence, learning abilities, reasoning skills, and memory. Reduces irritability and moodiness. Obviously, we know these things. It increases emotional control, the relaxation and rejuvenation aspects. It increases self-esteem, alertness, improvement in relationships. It lowers blood pressure. It prevents and slows pain, chronic pain, helps to manage chronic pain, heals chronic diseases. Of course, I can only say the word heal with a grain of salt. I have to tell you that, yoga and Ayurveda and meditation is not a replacement for your medical treatments, but it can boost the immune system, lower cholesterol levels, improve airflow, slow the effects of aging, decrease cortisol levels, and more. Something I really want to highlight here is slow the effects of aging. This does not mean that aging isn't beautiful. This means we're slowing the effects of the society we live in affecting our aging. Our minds create our realities. And if we think something and we don't fully believe it to be true, we believe it to be partly wonky, we'll get stuck within that until we can fully believe. And so if the first person to introduce me to this concept was my ex-husband, who has passed away now from a drug overdose, and him and I used to use heavy drugs together, and we lived a very hectic, crazy lifestyle. And we separated and divorced, and later on he passed away. And he was a very smart person, really too smart for his own good sometimes. And he would tell you the same thing if he was alive. But he told me one time, he wasn't talking to me, when I say this, like about my body. We were just talking about controlling things with the world, with our mind, etc. We were like Pinky in the Brain wanting to take over the world. But he told me that if somebody wanted to lose weight, they wouldn't even need to go to the gym or change anything, except they would need to practice meditation on it and envision so clearly, crystal clear concentration, unbreakable concentration, the image of their body or the weight being pulled off of them or whatever it was. And that was the first moment I thought, it was like an epiphany. It was like my whole perspective on the world changed, and now I'm this incredibly deep philosophical person. The neuroscience, there are 8 regions of the brain that are altered when practicing mindful meditation. I'm not going to read off every single one of these, but this is a helpful list for when you're studying the brain map. Here we do have a brain map, and you can go deeper into this, or I also suggest, because I created this handout years ago, we have so much more technology available to us today. I could type up right now into ChatGPT, these 8 regions of the brain and how they are specifically altered when practicing mindful meditation. So we'll do that in a moment after going through this PDF download slide. Presentation. Another scans of the brain. We got some thermal imaging, frontal lobe, parietal lobe. I don't know what the parietal lobe is, to be honest, but the occipital lobe I do, and the frontal lobe I do. Before and after. I would like to know the effects of meditation on a brain that's been around technology, computers, and a phone all day. As you can see, maybe this person had a lot of heat right here in this area of their head. Why? Why was it only located in this area? Were they talking on the phone? Did they have earplugs in? Did they do a Bluetooth? Were they next to the TV? Was a radio blasting in their ear? What was happening? And then over here, we can still see that same side was more lit up than the rest of the brain. Why? I don't know. Those would be some good questions to understand these images and some more detailed studies. But it does, I can tell you, it does help to create a repetitive pattern. So when you're in a chronic state of stress and you're producing a lot of cortisol, it kind of takes over your frontal lobe and your ability to reason and your ability to make rational decisions. And then you have these big drastic mood swings. If you're doing meditation consistently, that's going to create that patterning in the brain and in the neural pathways. So that way the frontal lobe isn't easily shut down, right? The amygdala isn't going on crazy overdrive. Mindfulness significantly reduces anxiety after 20 minutes of meditation practice. What the heck does this mean? I don't know. These little images right there, no idea. The brainwave spectrum divides into 5 bands with different associated states. This part is like, this is money right here. This is the money education right here. When you're understanding the different waves, the wavelengths, you can find frequencies to heal specific patterns in and around you. So delta waves, this is associated with the deep unconscious, intuitive, and insightful side of the mind. The theta waves can really activate the subconscious creativity and deep relaxation. Alpha wave, that's the spacey and dreamy state, receptive and passive. Beta wave, so conscious thought, external focus. Gamma waves, not well understood, but linked to perception, alertness, or even anxiety, which can be very helpful, right? They all serve a purpose. During successful meditation, during stressful meditation, the subject typically starts with high beta, so thinking, right? So we're over here, high beta, and then experiences more alpha, okay, and then followed by theta and then delta, right, the deepest level. After some time, the reverse process takes place, bringing the person back to feeling awake and refreshed, and sometimes new insights. And I want to talk about this because when we study samadhi, and we study going kind of beyond that meditative trance state, there are different layers to samadhi. And you can experience these different layers of samadhi, which bring you to, these deep delta wavelengths in the brain. And I'm trying to explain this in a way that makes sense. My first experience going into a deeper layer of samadhi and of meditation was I was in a very special yoga studio, sound healing studio. There was crystal bowls everywhere. This was a studio, the most authentic yoga studio that I've ever been to, and they, unfortunately closed down during 2020, the financial crisis that happened. They shut down, and that broke my heart, but it also left me with what I needed. It gave, I wanted more, and I wanted more of that, and I wanted more of those classes, but all I needed was one. And I've been there multiple times, but there was one class that did it for me. And this was a 90-minute meditation, and we were laying down, we had cozy blankets, they had a big giant gong, they had several gongs and a bunch of bowls, and they had a very specific process of which bowls to use to make specific frequencies to specifically bring you from the beta to the alpha to the theta to the delta state. And I remember I was laying down to begin my practice, and it felt almost instantly, because of the sound frequencies, I was brought into this state of nothing, no judgment, nothing. And it felt like I was there for a snap of a finger, and boom, the meditation was over. I wasn't sleeping. That's what I do know. I wasn't aware necessarily. There was some type of slight awareness, and when we study samadhi, you'll understand the different layers of samadhi and where you can find where I was at in that level. There was some type of awareness for me to have remembered, right? But I know that is to be familiar, because I've also experienced dying one time in an overdose where I had 2% oxygen in the body. I had no heart rate. This had gone on for a while. I had choked on my own throw up. They had to cut off my clothes, give me 6 rounds of Narcan, and shock my heart back to life. And I remember having a level of awareness where I was as well. There's a certain type of remembrance to where I was. And I felt like in the samadhi and the meditation, I was in the state where if I had gone any deeper, how would I have gotten out of that state? That's what I felt. That's what I think. I don't know. I've never really gone deeper than that point. But it was one of the most profound experiences of my entire yogic journey, meditation journey. So I wanted to share that with you, that experience. And then, of course, maybe you've heard about the 2 modes that our brain operates in. We spend about 45% of our life daydreaming. And if we're on social media a lot, then that number probably has changed drastically or will change drastically. When someone is daydreaming, their brain shows consistent activity in certain regions, okay? These areas working together are called the default mode network. That's one of the modes. The default mode network involved parts of the brain that are responsible for thinking about yourself, which is directly correlated with some mental illnesses. Depression, anxiety goes way beyond those as well. One of the areas making up the default mode network is the amygdala, the fight or flight response, which is obviously more active when people are stressed. So like I said, if you're in that chronic state of stress, the amygdala goes on overdrive, the prefrontal cortex of the brain shuts down, and your reasoning shuts down. Your inability to make clear decisions shuts down. So you're stuck in that state of fight or flight. The opposite of the default mode network would be the task positive network. And only one of these can be activated at one time, the default mode network or the task positive network. The task positive network is said to be responsible for the here and now, the rational thinking back into my center. When we are in the task positive network, we are in the present moment, which means there is no worry, there is no past, there is no future. And I'm sure that everyone has heard depression is when you're living in the past, anxiety is when you're worrying about the future. That's not black and white, that's not set in stone, that doesn't mean for every situation. But when we practice mindfulness, we are keeping the task positive network engaged while allowing the mind to be content with exactly where it's at without freaking out. So to wrap that up, the next time you're in a stressful situation or you're worried about something, try to remember that you are in control of the brain. So remembering is the first step. We have to remember how we want to feel, how we decided we want to feel in these stressful situations. We have to remember how we acted previously in stressful situations, which we don't want to act that way anymore. So we have to remember that anything that we've taught ourselves, and then go to your toolbox, right? You have the tools, but if you can't remember them, you're not going to use them. So you have to remember them. You can switch from the default mode network to the task positive network at any moment by practicing mindfulness. Learning how to start and keep a daily practice is important because you will be able to reap all of the benefits of meditation that mindfulness has to offer you. And if you decide you enjoy practicing mindfulness more than meditation, or the other way around, then that's absolutely acceptable. So you find what works for you, what fits for you. So this slide says it's created a 1-minute meditation. I'm not doing that meditation. We're going to go over a metta meditation, loving kindness, because if you are dealing with overcoming trauma, overcoming pain, overcoming anger, overcoming mood swings, overcoming difficulties in life, stressful situations, you're having arguments in your relationships, you're acting out of character, whatever it is, we can really come back to ourselves and back to remembering our core values with a loving kindness meditation. So let me pull open my other PDF download. Okay. Uh-oh, what did I do with it? Oh, what did I do with it again? Okay, so this is the loving kindness metta meditation presentation. Let me get my jacket on. I'm a little bit chilly. So to send yourself and others and the world loving kindness is the goal. Metta means to care and wish well for another being without judging them, to accept them independently without expecting anything in return. Metta itself translates to loving friendship and benevolence. So many people use it today for many reasons. To practice metta meditation is to know world peace. So how do we overcome resentments and anger towards others or another person or ourselves? How do we put away our own ego in order to succeed? Metta meditation. How do we practice self-love and get rid of negative self-talk? Metta meditation. How do we send someone love that's in need of love or healing or kindness? Sending the world love, universal, all living beings, kind, loving energy. Open the heart chakra in yourself so you're able to give and receive love, and many other reasons why to practice. How do you practice? Preferably seated, but you can lie down, you can be standing. You can practice this on the go. You don't have to have your eyes closed. You don't have to be in the full setup. I like to say like meditation setup, where like you clear your space and you sit down and there's no clutter and it's quiet. And you know what I mean? You try to make this perfect setting. You don't have to have that for this meditation. You can practice at any time of the day. If you're into crystals, some crystals hold a frequency of kindness and love would be rose quartz, citrine, selenite, and tiger's eye. Essential oils, lavender, over the heart. I caution using essential oils, very small amounts. Frankincense and cedarwood, I prefer over lavender. In this sense, it's just a personal preference. We usually begin by sending loving kindness to ourselves through a mantra, and I'll give you a script that will guide you, right? And you'll have a whole practice attached to my yoga teacher training course, whether you're watching this video as a preview or watching this video in the course as an enrolled student. You'll, if you're a student, you'll have access to that meditation. Okay, and then through that mantra, we use that same mantra, only switching it around the who. So when we sending ourselves that mantra, or the loving kindness through mantra, we send that same mantra to somebody else. We just switch it around from I to they, right? Or her or him or whatever. And sending it to someone we love very much. And then we send it to somebody we don't love very much, maybe somebody we hate. And then we send it to the whole entire world. So this right here is all you need to practice metta meditation. These are the mantras you can use. You start by saying them to yourself 3 times. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. And again, so you do that 3 times. You think about somebody you love very much, maybe somebody you love unconditionally. Maybe it's your dog. Maybe it's a version of somebody in your mind. Maybe it's your family member, your loved one, your spouse, your child, your friend, whatever. May you, or if you're imagine like you're talking to them, you can say you, or if you're thinking about them, you can say, may they be filled with loving kindness. May they be well, or may she be peaceful and at ease. So you replace it with their, directing to them. You say that 3 times to them. Then you think about somebody you hate, somebody that's wronged you, somebody that you don't necessarily maybe want to give love and kindness to, but that is how we break through the gates of resentment and anger and distrust, right? So may they be filled with loving kindness. May they be well. May they be peaceful and at ease. May they be happy. And you do that 3 times and you send it to them. And then the final one, you think about the entire world. I imagine the entire earth in the palm of my hand, and I'm looking down in it and I say, may all be filled with loving kindness. May all be well. May all be peaceful and at ease. May all be happy. So I hope that you enjoyed this meta presentation, very short and simple. I will open up right now my next handout, which is the meta meditation script. And give me 1 minute. Okay, so here's the script. It's very simple, and I'll have it available for all of the students. So it has the same exact information, but now you can either read this to yourself and practice. You can use the recording I've already made and practice along to that. You can use this to read when you're teaching other people. You can record it yourself and then practice along to your own voice. So once you're ready to begin, you would close your eyes, relax your shoulders, take a moment to connect with your breath, allow relaxation to flow through your entire body, allow your inhales to lengthen up the spine through the crown, exhales to relax the outer body. Imagine yourself just as you are right now. Imagine you're looking at yourself internally or externally. Repeat the following mantra. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease, and may I be happy. Okay, so you see how that goes. You see how I'm changing my voice. I'm starting to get you into those different wavelengths, right? More relaxation. Take a moment to think or imagine someone that you love very much, someone that loves you back just as much, as close as possible to unconditional love that you either have in your life or that you can think of. Once you've thought about the person, you repeat the following mantra to them. May they be filled with love and kindness. May they be well. May they be peaceful and at ease. May they be happy. And then take a moment to think about somebody you don't love. Maybe you have hate towards, you have resentment towards. Once you've thought about that person in detail, repeat the following mantras. May they be filled with loving kindness. So the same thing, right? Now take a moment to think about the entire earth and all of the living beings as one giant ball. You give them the same mantras. So we went over that. You understand that. You'll have these scripts. You'll have the practice to go practice to. You have a good foundation and understanding of some history of meditation, what it does a little bit to the body and to the brain, why it's important to practice, especially when we're thinking about the two modes that our brain operates in, and we can only operate in one at once. So we choose to do these practices so we can choose to respond healthy in situations that are stressful. So there is one more quick slide here. This is obviously, I didn't create this. This came from Yoga for Brain Health. We'll go over this and then we'll close together. Your brain on yoga, because we were just kind of talking about the neuroscience of meditation. It's yoga includes meditation. So the frontal lobe enables you to plan your sequences, execute a posture, adjust your yoga pose for better alignment. The parietal lobe processes the sensations you feel, allowing you to tune into your body, to listen to your yoga teacher, and to sense your position on the mat. The temporal lobe allows you to process the sound of your breath and remember your sequences. The occipital lobe lets you visualize cues from your instructor, oh my God, and set a focal point for balance. Brainstem regulates your vital functionings like breathing, heartbeat, relays information from the body to the brain, and the cerebellum is the master of your balance and muscle memory, letting you know poses without thinking and making your practice feel familiar and natural. So when you're doing your practice, if you have this, information right here on the screen and you jot it down, you take notes on it, you save it, you screenshot it, whatever you do, and then you can look back and think, oh, I had a really great time. I could really master all of the balance and the muscle memory, but I really had a hard time processing my sensations, or I really had a hard time visualizing the cues, or I had a really hard time remembering my sequence, right? So maybe my temporal lobe isn't functioning at its highest state. So you can kind of analyze, self-diagnose based on your own understanding of your patterning, seeing what's happening with your own self. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming with me on this journey into meditation. The next videos, we're going to dive deeper into meditation, deeper into the last 3 limbs of yoga, the layers of samadhi, and of course, more meditations for you to practice too and to understand. Okay, have a great day. Namaste.